Here we are once again. Welcome to 40K by Night. My name is Steve Joel. I'm your host for today's program. This is the podcast in which we try and help you get better at playing Imperial and Chaos Knights on the tabletop at events or just in Garage Hammer or with your local group or in the store or wherever. If you just want to get a little better at the game, this is the place you come to for your podcasts. Welcome if you're listening on your podcast provider, if it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever. Welcome also to our YouTube viewers. We are relatively new on YouTube, and it's great to have you with us watching on that platform. All of the platforms, all of the information you need is at 40kbynight.com. That's our website. That's where the pods are loaded. That also gives you access to the gear and to the dice and to all of the other info you're going to need. And a little brief about our expert panel of hosts as well. And today we're going to be talking to a couple of the best in the business with Imperial Knights and Chaos Knights about tournaments and about some of the changes that have happened over the last little while. So let's introduce both of them right now and say hello, first of all, from the UK to Ratnu. Vaidya. How are you doing?
Hello, Steve. Hello, Brian. I am doing very well. Thank you once again for having me on.
I know there's been a lot of moving house in your life, and there are exams coming up, and there's all sorts of stuff going on for you over the last little while. So maybe not as many tournaments, but you've got your eye on WTC, which is not, it's August, I guess, but there's lots of prep between now and then, right?
110%, 110%. It's very much a marathon as opposed to a sprint. So it's about sort of getting those steady reps in, and I think we're going to be expecting likely 11th edition. So there's going to be a whole raft of changes that's going to sort of take a bit of time to get accustomed to.
And that will come up in the conversation today, 11th, and just how much we need to invest in various things with 11th on the horizon. Brian Jones from the United States, and I say locations because I'm in New Zealand, Ratnu's in the UK, we've got the US represented. We are at all three points of the Western Hemisphere. Brian, great to see you. How are you, man?
I'm wonderful. Happy New Year to you both. I hope you had a happy holidays.
Yeah,
I'm excited. It's a new year. Everybody's got their rankings reset. We have a data slate. Everyone's taking it easy. It's a brand new world out there.
I just messaged Vic Vijay. Now David Gaylard, who's a fellow New Zealander, and Vic do a podcast in which they give Knights quite a hard time, and they just did a tier list and said that Imperial Knights, I may be in need of just a complete rewrite, but certainly bottom tier. One of the questions that's come up on the Discord, and we do give our Discord and Patreon members the chance to ask questions, is do we think that's fair? So Brian, do you think that somewhere right down the bottom between D tier and full rewrite is where Imperial Knights sit at the moment? Not many people taking them in teams events, I have to say.
I would respectfully disagree. I think their place in team events is a competitive spot in the sense that I think they can be brought as a blunter list. I think the changes to Eldar benefited our placings in that, as that is one of the armies we could not blunt well. And I think they have a place in singles as well. I think it will be intriguing with these new 500 Worlds detachments. Pantheon of Woe, Catan getting a nice little glow up, how that may shift things around and what people bring into their lists. But yeah, I think Valor Strike is still a phenomenally great detachment for singles. Questor's Companions, if you dodge the right matchups, you can go 5-0. It can just stat check people. But you are at detachment. You are at the pairings mercy, which I never love. But I don't think Knights are out of it. And Ratnu, I think CK right still has some. Yes, there were some points hikes, but still has a place at the table, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think in that teams context in particular, I feel like obviously I think we'll go a little bit more in depth. I feel like the meta's become a little bit more hostile towards Knights laterally because of how Catan are. But I think, you can't really argue with first defender. I'm going to stick 108 shots of Gatling gun on the table. I'm going to get my board choice, and doesn't really matter what I go up against. There's going to be a lot of gun, and as long as I can touch some terrain features and see some objectives, it's going to be a good time.
Gosh, Brian, imagine having so many Gatling shots available to you. Wouldn't that be great?
Gatling cannon shot. Or imagine like having a similar strength 6 chain cannon on an Armiger chassis. Wouldn't that be?
Yeah, well, wouldn't
12
that be
shots
great?
of that. I don't know what I'd do.
Or imagine having access to, I don't know, little throwaway units like Nurglings and Beasts of Nurgle. Oh, look, let's not go down that road. So can we talk about, you've already kind of touched on it with Eldar changes and new detachments and the Catan. And again, these are questions that have come up in our Discord and Patreon. But from both of your points of view, what are the changes? Because there aren't really any directly to Knights, other than a couple of points drops. And
Hey,
some
that
of the bigger
defender
changes.
came down.
Hey, how about that? But are there other armies that have either come into play with new detachments or changes to other detachments in the meta that have affected us or made our lives harder or easier or whatever? So maybe Ratnu first from a CK point of view.
Cool. So I think CK, when the initial kind of data slate, like we kind of got away with murder a little bit. Most of our competitive builds, the kind of competitive staples, were dependent on effectively like 3 data sheets, being the double Gatling gun despoiler, the carnivore, and effectively like the demon mishmash, be that Nurglings, Beasts of Nurgle, Plague Bearers, Rotigus had quite a lot of success. And really, in that kind of CK portion, the only thing that went up was the double Gatling gun despoiler that went up to 390 points, which meant that you couldn't take that sort of standard competitive list, which was 3 double Gatling gun despoilers, 3 carnivores, 3 Beasts of Nurgle, 3 units of Nurglings, and a unit of Plague Bearers anymore. And it means that you couldn't run the mono build, which is the 3 double Gatling gun despoilers, 3 carnivores, 3 stalkers. Obviously, there's a lot of data sheet diversity within that. It's literally 2.5 data sheets. But I think from that individual point of view, looking at it in a vacuum, it didn't seem that bad. But actually, now that more and more rules have come out and more things have changed, I think that the meta is quite a lot more hostile to Knights than I sort of initially thought when the data sheets, when the data slate came out. So if we think about Catan as the sort of prime example, it's a T11, 16 wound, 3 up, 4 up, 5 up, feel no pain chassis that is reasonably like high points. So it can be seen as kind of knight analogous. You need a lot of resources, a lot of commitment to shift it. It does a lot of damage, like things like the Nightbringer and the Void Dragon. And because they've now gotten a little bit more mobility, because they've gotten some better rule support, even if they themselves aren't necessarily, phenomenal into Knights, you can kite them, you can sort of make the most sort of targeting that OC4. If the meta targets Catan, then the meta is inadvertently suddenly really good into Knights, because all the tools that people use to take down Catan are also really, really good into something that doesn't have a 5 up feel no pain and that doesn't always have a 4 up invul save. So from that point of view,
Don't forget -1 damage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Which, and for a list that functions off of 108 strength 6 AP2 2 damage shots, suddenly having -1 damage boogeyman all over the place is not. That is one thing that I feel like that 108 Gatling cannon shots is not the answer to. Is Catan.
Right. But again, with Ratnu's point of armies building to deal with -1 damage, that then getting away from CK for a second, if you're building, say, a spearhead with a defender as your big thing, that is your kind of go-to, hey, I've got -1 damage. Well, suddenly armies are building to deal with that. They're taking 3, 4, 5 damage. I don't know, whatever the way to deal with it is. But as you were saying, Ratnu, the point is if people are building to deal with that, then they are, as a sideline, as a natty little sideline, dealing with our armies as well. Yeah, that's right. Are there any other big changes other than the Catan across other armies that you think affect CK or Imperial Knights?
Yeah, so typically from that kind of CK perspective, the double Gatling gun despoiler is quite vulnerable to certain defensive archetypes. So we're thinking T12, 2 up saves, -1 damage, which we've spoken about, armor of contempt. So if we look at things like Guard Grizzled Company, where we're seeing T12, 2 up AOC Dawns, we're seeing lots of Bullgrin that are -1 damage. So a lot of the kind of offensive profiles that you previously could sort of rely on as a kind of fair weather, okay against everything data sheet is less effective into meta threats. Things like the Victrix changes that everyone was really happy about, going from 4 wounds to 3 wounds. If they're getting cheaper and it still takes 2 Gatling shots to kill 1, actually Chaos Knights are worse into them because they are more defensive per point than they used to be, because you still need the same number of shots to get through to kill less points of Victrix.
Are they cheaper?
Yep.
Did they get cheaper?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. Just broken, and they got cheaper. So, yeah, the 3 wound thing is fine for units that pop out 3 wounds.
The IK side has been, it's been a roller coaster, because I came out of the data slate very excited. Our natural predators kind of went, Eldar received some hits. And then from the IK perspective, the move towards Grizzled is actually nice, because one of the major problems for IK going into Guard is that there is no reason for them to not hit the Overwatch button 5 times a game with Adorn. And it lethals, so it's just free shots every 6, wound, we can't rotate, and that goes away, right? The lethals are gone, which makes Overwatch substantially less effective and less ability to push through like incredible amounts of free damage. So that is like a net gain from the IK side. But then the 500 Worlds book said, no. Stop being excited for the holidays. What if Catan came back? And Catan are a very difficult, interesting beast for us to have to kill. And to your point, they cause everyone to tech for them, which inadvertently is teching for Knights. Victrix was another thing that was not necessarily terrifying to Knights, because we do have flat 4 damage guns. We have flat 3 damage guns too. And like, if I'm bringing Castellan, which I was in my Valor Strike list, if you're going to bring like a 9-man Victrix blob, I'm like kind of excited. My Volcano Cannon AP5 ignores cover. Cool. I like a 2-up armor save model with no invul. I'm cool. I'm all about shooting that. You know, AP4 on the plasma. We actually had some decent answers into those lists, and still do even with the changes. But I just think Pantheon of Woe is going to cause us a lot of problems for at least its initial rush. I think people will discover the same thing you discover with a Questor's Companions list, which is like you live and die by a 4-up, but having an inbuilt 5-up pain and a -1 damage like really smooths that curve for you that it doesn't necessarily do in Questor's Companions. But it you know, if you fail the wrong saves, you really do suffer. But man, Nightbringer moving 10 inches with advance and charge all the time makes me look at that and be like, yes, sign me up. I would like that.
Yeah. Now, can I ask, just because I haven't kept up with it, as I mentioned over the holidays, but the changes to Catan, did I see somewhere that the reduction of wounds has changed? Is it only -1 damage now rather than halving damage?
Correct.
But still,
but they went up. They gained 4 additional wounds. And more importantly, for the Knight side, they gained movement, which was our major strength, in that we could engage them on our terms. But gaining movement on all of them, as well as the Nightbringer gaining access to advance and charge in Pantheon of Woe is a major problem, because the Nightbringer will in fact eat your lunch.
To do a shout out to my friend Josh. He brought a Catan heavy list. We ended up facing each other at an event just before Christmas. I had Questor's Companions. Let me introduce you to my friend the Errant, because Catans hate that guy. And he was magnificent. And Josh's Nightbringer failed a charge and was then just standing out in the open. So, which was quite a big deal in that game. So, and as you said, very similarly to Questor's Companions, if people are relying on that, it's one of those things you've mentioned before, Brian, and we've discussed before on the show, where once the snowball starts rolling downhill, it goes really fast. It builds up really quickly. So if the Nightbringer fails a charge, or if you have one turn in that list of things don't go your way, things can go bad really quickly, as they can with Questora's companions. You lose those big things and
You
suddenly
lose two
you're out
bigs in one turn, and things are real bad.
You're done. Yeah. Okay, so those are the major changes over the last little while. The main focus of this episode, I really wanted to be about tournament prep and getting ready for an event. I know there are lots of events around the world. The Alpine Cup has been going on. I know there's teams events and individual events coming up. We've got a couple here in New Zealand, which are not very far away, but it's that kind of, start the start of the year, and people are fresh and going into it and hoping for great things and turning around and making New Year's resolutions about all this and that. So if we can help people get ready for events, I'd love to be able to do that in the next little while. And with you guys being two of the best at events, the best performers at events that you go to, I thought, who better to ask? So before we even get to an event, I don't know if list building is the first stage or doing research is the first stage, but can you give me some help with just where you begin with getting ready for an event? Are you looking at the meta? Are you looking at, where is the beginning point for you, Ratnu, with just preparing for an event that you can see coming?
My goodness. So I think the first thing when it comes to any event is terrain. So understanding what terrain format you're going to be playing on, be that singles or be that teams. And with each kind of terrain format comes its own associated rule set. So if you're playing GW, then you've got the GW rules. Playing WTC, there's a whole kind of extra set of rules to know and understand. So first and foremost is, what terrain formats are you going to be playing on? Because that really influences what type of list that you build and what sort of type of list that you bring. So for instance, WTC has fewer corridors that are 4 inches or more, which means that you're less likely and less incentivized to take a list that has more dogs. GW has staging on the outside of ruins because of the terrain plates. So depending on what your local TOs do, if you have fast moving shooting pieces, you can hit opponent staging zones with your super heavy walker and towering. So you might be more incentivized to take big knights there. So terrain is definitely the kind of first consideration when it comes to any event, and then taking it from there.
Okay. What difference with Imperial Knights, practically speaking, does terrain make, Brian, do you think? If I'm, for example, in the next 2 events, the first one I'm going to is WTC terrain, and then the next one after that will be mostly GW style or UKTC style terrain. There's a bit of a mixture. So in practical terms, what difference does that make for an Imperial Knights player?
A substantial amount. You need to pay attention if you're playing on WTC boards and look at them ahead of time on what you're going to be playing, because terrain that do not have a 4-inch wide clearance on the sides, which means you can trap your armatures unintentionally, like in a corner of the board, and have to go a very long way to get out.
Yeah.
Or you cannot get away from a charge, and so you do not want to play yourself into a trap. And now that big knights have the ability to walk through walls, we have a bit of a better escape mechanism and ability to leverage the board than previously. And so it's very, very, very important to pay attention to just understanding what you're going to playing into. And I would say, like, Ratnu's 100% right. Like, make sure you understand super heavy walker and towing into terrain and how to leveraging your line of sight. If you're taking a knight's list to a tournament, that is first and foremost, it's fundamental to being able to play the game in a smooth way, to being able to plan out your turns, and also to ensuring a good game for you and your opponent, a good experience, because the last thing you want is for your opponent to be like, all right, well, you stood on that, so now I'm going to shoot you. And you're like, what? Or vice versa. You want to make sure you go over that kind of thing early on. And to be able to do that, you've got to make sure you understand it.
Would that mean maybe looking at things like, so Ratnu, you were talking about not bringing as many dogs, and Brian, if we're not bringing as many armatures, if you can see in the terrain that maybe there are going to be more opportunities for agents for places like Nurglings, or in our case, subductors, or whatever you might have, to be able to go forward and hide in nooks and crannies, or be able to walk through walls and get onto points or get into the middle. Is that something you'd then look at building into a list?
To an extent, I'm always going to avoid, like, if I was playing on a WTC heavy table on all 3 rounds of a tournament, I'm not going to bring like a triple Land Raider list, right? If I was playing Space
Right.
Marines, because I'm just going to be trapped in my deployment zone if I can manage to get all three on the board. So you have to take that into consideration. I think, that's in my list building. It's actually maybe not the first consideration, because the first one is like, what do I want to play? Because ultimately, like, I think that is an important question to ask yourself. I think sometimes we all skip that question and we're like, well, what's the best thing for me to play? And it's important that it's okay if the best thing for you to play and what you want to play are different. That's totally fine. And you, because you're going to be traveling, you're spending real money usually for travel, hotel, lodgings to go to this tournament, to play with models that you invested a lot of time in. Make sure you're going to play with something that you enjoy. Like, that's first and foremost it. And then once you've got that idea, you can tweak around like, oh, well, like, I really love a Porphion and I would love to drop this model on the table, but this WTC like terrain is probably not the place for me to do it. You can make those adjustments, but that's, I think, always the first thought for me is, what do I want to play?
Right.
And then also, like, from there, it's going into, will the terrain and the meta talk me out of that? Like, I might really want to play Questor's Companions at Cherokee, but the meta is really not going to be healthy for me to take that and expect to do well. If what is going to let me have fun is like just playing 5-6 rounds with 5-6 knights on the table and that's it, cool. I can check that box, but it will be very quick games.
Yeah, and I do honestly think that's another important part. So we've covered list building previously in other episodes. So we won't go in depth into list building and the decision process there, but it is, I think, a really important consideration when you're signing up for a tournament. In your head, understand where you're at, what your goals are, be realistic. For you two, a realistic goal is win the event. For me, a realistic goal is, look, if I can go 4-1, that would be amazing for me. 3-2 is probably more realistic. The better goal is just take the models, as you said, Brian, take the models I really want to play and just go in hoping to have fun and provide a good experience for the opponent as well. So my goal is to go and just really enjoy the event, have fun over a couple of days, not get too wound up about it. Like, I find the more I set a performance goal, the more I get wound up about how it's going, and then I get salty if it's not going my way. You know what I mean? So for players at my level, mid-table merchants, just understand where you're at. If things don't go your way, don't get uptight about it. Set realistic goals as part of the build-up process.
Players at all levels. Ratnu, I think neither one of us went to Worlds with an expectation of winning. I think you and I both went with, like, we're bringing an army that we want to have fun with. We're hoping to have a good time. We submitted our lists. We got our pod, and we're like, oh, we're in the same pod. Oh, Liam's in our pod. Oh, okay. and so, I think for everybody at home, that's like, oh, well, Brian must just, Ratnu, you guys probably approach every tournament with, well, it's win, or this is like not, I didn't achieve what I wanted to. No, I went to Worlds, wanted to have a great time. I got to play like 3 rounds standing next to Ratnu, meet in person, and play some really amazing opponents. I did not win. I did not come close to winning, and that's okay. To your point, Steve, I went in with a very realistic expectation of what I was walking into.
Right. I love that you two met at the event as well and had a great time.
Yes. We Ratnu, it was like 3 out of the first 4 rounds. We were just table,
Yeah,
just getting to hang out and chat. It was awesome.
It's so cool.
It's a lovely experience.
Yeah.
I think you.
Sorry, carry on.
You make a really interesting point about kind of setting game expectations, the sort of idea of like a 3-2 or a kind of 4-1. I think that irrespective of level, or kind of irrespective of player skill or presumed player skill or anything like that, one of the like really healthy ways of kind of thinking about the game is that, if you set yourself an arbitrary target, like you said, you may feel kind of salty or upset when you don't make it. So I think what I find really helpful is to sort of redefine expectations in the sense of have fun and make mistakes, because those are the 2 things that are going to happen in every single tournament. And if you can do both of those things, then you can come out and learn from it.
Yeah, that's really good. In terms of travel, like I've only traveled a few times to an event, but if you're traveling to an event, Are there considerations that you make? I mean, you want to get your accommodation sorted out. I guess that's kind of a given.
Have a place to stay first and foremost.
Have a place to stay. Get all those things kind of figured out in advance. But when transporting your army, when you're playing knights, that's one of the questions that gets asked on the Discord for newer players, particularly, is, holy crap, how do I transport these bad boys to an event on a plane? I stressed when I had to take them on an aircraft for the first time, and I actually went out to the airport with my case.
I still stress
and put it in
every
the
time.
little thing to make sure this is going to fit as carry-on baggage, because I don't want to put it, check it in. So particularly if you're going, for people listening who are going away to an event in the next little while, what are the things that you kind of have to take into account for traveling?
Ratnu, you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the UK, we're pretty lucky in the sense that most events that you'll go to will be sort of driving distance. So you can take whatever, like big box, plastic box, even take a carrier bag. The world's your oyster when you just have a car. So when I went to Worlds, it was the first time actually traveling with models. I found it helpful to keep them in the carry-on, which meant that I was always with them. I don't care if my clothes get lost. I don't care if like my toothbrush disappears. As long as I've got my little war dogs with me, then I'm safe and happy.
Yeah.
It did lead to sort of a slightly awkward conversation with the security person at the airport. But yeah, it's keeping them in the carry-on and just trying to I was concerned about the magnets if you have magnetized models, but there weren't really any issues when I was flying. But yeah, I'm sure Brian's had much more experience in flying with knights.
I forget, and you can drive most everywhere. It's great, and my range of driving is yes, but also wants to be reasonable. I think carry-on is the way to go if you're going to be flying with them. I've watched people transport models to WTC in a cardboard box, banker's box that's duct taped, and they arrived somehow. But for me personally, not the risk I'm willing to take. I care Multicase is who I've used. They are a UK company. And they have like their everything is built around like card boxes, and all their bags are built around that. So you can fit X number of boxes in a bag, and does it fit in a carry-on or not? So I know that I can fit them in the overhead bin. That's where my knights go. I know they're right above me, and they're riding there. To your point, Ratnu, the other bag gets checked. The display board gets checked. That's fine if it doesn't show, as long as it got my models. I think even I'm taking another step, like for as traveling to tournaments, one rule I run with is invest in the things that go between like you and the ground. So a good pair of shoes goes a very long way for a tournament. I think we all kind of forget, especially if you haven't done it for a while or you're going to your first tournament, you're on your feet talking. If you're playing 3 rounds in a day, 7 to 9 hours. And then chatting between games, going to lunch, everything, it all adds up. You got to have comfortable footwear that you can be on your feet in, that is going to give your back a rest. A good pair of shoes goes an eternity. The mats, I previously scoffed at them when I was younger, and my body could forgive me. But now the folks who are able to bring one of those mats to stand on that reduces the strain on your back, I think it's a great $40 to spend.
One of the first things I do is look for a chair.
Making sure you have a chair and that you're gonna sit. And I know these sound like basic things, but I find myself all the time, I'm always really excited about a game. So I'm walking around the table, going to wherever we're fighting, doing stuff, and then 3 hours later I'm like, God, why is my I haven't sat down this whole game. Whoops.
I'm a 56-year-old man, so screw you guys. I'm I don't care if you judge me. I'm getting a chair. I've got comfortable shoes, and the other thing on that is just appropriate clothing. Like in the summertime when I'm going to a place, even if you can ask people who've been to the venue, does this place have decent air conditioning or windows that can open? Because again, overheating or getting too cold, either way at an event, it's just, these are the things that are going to suck up energy that you don't need to have sucked up. You know what I mean? You want to be focusing on the game and your opponent and having fun, as you were saying. So having a sore back or sore knees or feet or a headache or take some water, make sure you've got enough fluids going, and all of these things that
Make sure
will
you
just
drink the fluids. It's so easy to have the water bottle next to you on the table and
Yeah.
finish the game, and the water bottle is still right there full.
Yeah.
Like, give yourself that chance, because it goes a long way, especially when you compound that if it's 2-3 day tourney. Ratnu, I mean, Worlds was 4 days, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's only 2 rounds a day, but 4 days of 40K is, you've got to make sure you're hydrating, make sure you do eat something, and you branch out from just like con food at some point. And just remember that, like, your body is your body, and you have to snap out of 40K world at some point and treat it well so you can make it through that full weekend.
Yeah. The other question I have for you guys, if you're going away, you're transporting your models, however you're doing it, whether it's local or farther afield, I always take a little plastic bag with plastic glue, super glue, and a hobby knife, because things happen, right, at events. I don't know how many times my Calidus assassin has her hair snapped off, or she's snapped off the little stand that she's supposed to be leaping from. Models break. It's good to have a little repair kit with you. And ladies and gentlemen, take a spare tape measure. So many times I've been in an event and my tape measure's busted or gone all the way in and I can't get it out again. Have a spare tape measure.
Liam used my spare tape measure for the final 7 rounds of Worlds. Like, because his broke the first measurement he did on our round 3, and I was like, I got a spare. You can have it for the weekend. So definitely have one. And to go with that, one other spare to bring a spare night base.
Oh yeah, good idea. So I still haven't done that.
It's going to save you so many headaches, so many weird questions. And it will also, to be on your judge's good side, when you call them over and you're like, all right, we want to do this, and they're like, all right, nobody touch the mouse. And then you can go, actually, I got a spare base right here. And suddenly they're way happier that you called them over to the table. They don't feel like they're going to ruin someone's day.
Yeah, that applies to the round bases for the war dogs and the armigers too, I think, because there are so many times where you go, will this fit through this gap? Or, if I measure this way to there and that way to there, it goes there, rather than the guessing games of where you're going to end up, and will the base, you can't straddle a wall, for example, that kind of thing, So you just, that's a great shout. And I've seen people do it, but I keep forgetting to do it myself. Just in terms of things to take, while we're on that topic, do you guys use tokens and, little things to indicate what's got what buffs or enhancements? Or, I feel like you can possibly go too far with that, because then everything has pieces of paper and stuff all over it. But for the big things, I always have this, for example, the bondsman abilities. This is the guy that has it, because otherwise I'm going to forget, let alone my opponent, who's got what, right?
100%.
One of the really important things to sort of try and do over the course of a tournament, at least I've found, is try and reduce your cognitive load where possible. The kind of fewer things you need to think about, the kind of fewer things that you need to sort of actively process, means that you can dedicate more of that kind of time and space to actually playing the game. So I think for Chaos Knights, the sort of 2 really important ones are what you've got on your dread table, because I will always forget turn 1, turn 3. If it even gets to turn 5, I won't know what's happening. And the second one is the Infernal Lance little surge tokens to show that you've surged. Right. Just have a little thing that you can flip on and off. And the more you get used to it, and the more you're sort of familiar with it, and the more you kind of practice with it, it becomes second nature. And when you sort of have that, and when it reduces that kind of cognitive load, once again, it really makes the game flow much more smoothly, because okay, I've gotten this on my dread table ability. I can always sort of visually reference that really quickly. I know that this knight is surge, which means that I can keep that surge for a 5-up field, for a 5-up pinball in that next round. Sometimes if you're against an opponent that's got their own resource, it's often helpful to think about you also keeping track of that. So let's say if you're against like an Eldar opponent who's got their battle focus, whatever tokens, if you're against like a Gene Stealer cult opponent who's got resurgence points, just to make sure that both players are on the same page. As long as you sort of both sort of keep track of that, it makes the games flow much more smoothly, and everyone's happy that all the sort of numbers are kind of adding up.
I found a cool little widget for our honor code that has the 3 deeds, the 3 like benefits you can have, and it's got like you can mark the number of kills per round. It's like 3D printed, and it's phenomenal because I can set it on the table. It's approachable for my opponent and me. And to Ratnu's point, like visual things that will reduce my cognitive load are huge, so that I can so I've got little tokens for my bondsmen. When I play Valor Strike, I give out little tokens for the buffs because they hand out a buff to each other. And then the other thing that helps with reducing that cognitive load is just like if you can't have a visual cue, I build like an audio cue for myself, which sounds really stupid, but you will hear me anytime I play a game. My opponent will finish this turn, and I will, without a doubt, go, all right, end of your turn. Before I do anything, Calidus.
Right.
And I got that habit from Mysterious Guardian too, which that can't happen anymore. And frequently I'll say that sentence and then go, but my Calidus is dead. Cool, this was great. Next. But same thing when I get to the end of a movement phase, going, it's the nice thing about only having like 8 units. You can go move. All right, cool. Next. And it just helps you keep track of that stuff. And for me, keeps me focused in over the course of 7 or 8 rounds of 40K.
I feel like this is something that takes a little while to get the hang of doing, but I'm exactly the same now because I used to forget to do. I win a game, this is a very long time ago, win a game where I completely forgot to shoot my Storm Raven twice in a game. And it's just because I was excited about the charge phase, which I could see coming up. And I'm like, oh, that guy's put that there. That means, man, I'm going to be able to move and charge that. And you get your head into that zone and you forget the shooting part of the game, which is also quite important. But for newer players particularly, this is something if you're doing practice games, which we'll come to in a second as another part of the build up to an event, the more practice you can get, whether it's on TTS or in person, saying things out loud, Brian, is great advice. I have to do it now all the time. Command phase. What do I do? What do I need to do in the command phase? These are things I'm saying out loud all the way through the game. And you go, wait, that's shot, that's shot, that's shot, that's shot, that's shot. Okay, we're good to move on. You just got to make sure all the way through that you're saying out loud those things, because it really does help for you and for your opponent, who can then kind of double check your work as well as you're saying it out loud.
It's a mutual experience like that. You get to a shadow, like the shadow round at LVO. This is a fourth round in a day. We've 7th round in 2 days, and my opponent and I are both just like, okay, so we're doing this. Like it becomes you're playing together because you're both so tired, and there's something like, to me, that's a good bonding experience because you're both just, hey, I want to be accountable. I want you to help hold me accountable. I want to have a fun game. If you ever say that to me, who in the right mind when you start a game that way is gonna be like, no, I hate that idea.
Yeah, that's right. We don't want to have fun. No, but the other thing, sorry, Ratnu, I know you've got something to add here, but the other thing I really find saying stuff out loud helps with is that intentional play that a lot of people talk about, playing with intent. If you are saying, okay, I'm going to move these guys to there, that way I get to do the charge or whatever, and then your opponent or you, in whatever case, can say, hey, don't forget, this unit has fights first, or whatever the case may be. You get to then have that interaction where you're saying what you're intending to do, and they get to say, I have a gotcha thing that I can do. Do you still want to make that move? Whatever it might be. So, yes, we're really hammering this point, but saying things out loud, all great. Do you think playing practice games, I mean, I just feel like these are as much opportunity as you can get practice on TTS or in person. I prefer in person, but I'll do TTS if I have to. Is practice games a big part of the build up to an event, or is that just you play anyway? How do you feel about that, Ratnu?
I think practice games are helpful in a kind of number of ways. One is sort of going back to that, what do you think about when you're writing a list or thinking about an event? It's understanding the terrain. So when you play a practice game, it's really, really helpful to be like, okay, so if I deploy a knight here, I'm safe from XYZ line. And if I move here, I can threaten XYZ units, or this part of their staging, or these objectives. So having that kind of familiarity with how the boards are set up, and having that familiarity with what you can do, what you can threaten, and really how you can expose as much or as little as you want to achieve objectives is really, really helpful. And the second ways in which practice games are helpful is in practicing matchups and practicing your sort of macro strategy against things that you might expect to see at a tournament. If you like, if we now all rock up to the biggest super major that we can, having never played against Victrix, having never played against Catan, having never played against Grizzled Company, we will not understand from that experiential learning as much as we would have done if we played against a competent opponent who plays those armies, and we sort of appreciate what their threat ranges are. We appreciate some of the tricks that they can do. I think one of the really helpful things with any kind of practice game, with any game, as we're talking about, the single most important aspect is communicate. Talk about what you're doing. Talk about what your opponent's doing. Talk about their threat ranges. Talk about their stratagems. Talk about their profiles. As Brian was saying, it's a collaborative. It's a social game. It's you and your opponent versus the game, not necessarily you versus your opponent in many respects.
Right. Yeah. 100%. So in terms of practice games, it is one of those things that, so for me, I get a time to play maybe one game a week. And it's usually against the same guy because my hours are odd. And so a lot of the time playing a tournament is like, that's 5 games in a weekend or 6 games in a weekend. That's way more than I would usually do. TTS is a great tool. Watching battle reports is a great tool. I also want to, and I know this just sounds like pandering, but it's really not. Being able to utilize someone like Brian who does coaching is amazing, because you then get to pick a person's brain who's been through so many more games and in so many more situations and knows so much more stuff. So for someone like me to be able to go to someone like Brian or whoever and who knows the army and can help you through situations, and then you can just kind of go, set up, play a couple of rounds, reset, go another couple of rounds, reset, and you can just kind of have these things come up. This is when you're at the start of a game, this is where you want to be, this is what you want to do. So watching battle reports so that you learn other armies, getting some coaching so that you're, just accelerating your ability to get to know other armies and get to know certain situations, I think is viable if you're in a position to be able to do it. I don't expect you necessarily to comment on that, Brian, but
the only thing I would
from
say
my experience, it's worth doing.
It is. And if you all of that is, if you find that you're like, I don't have the time to play a practice game, like, I got a job, I got kids, I got a life, like this is, but if you can carve out 20 minutes, boot up TTS, load up the first GW layout you're going to play on, deploy your list. That's it. Just deploy. To Ratnu's point, if I deploy right here, I could just get shot off the table. You will be amazed at how much your game plan will improve by simply doing one practice deployment before your tournament. I'm dead serious. Like, if you want to talk about incremental gains and just how do I go better prepared, sit down on TTS, deploy on each of the layouts you're going to play real quick, just so you understand the sightlines, where your models can go. This is very important for Imperial Knights, where sometimes big knights don't have a safe place to go, and it's important to know that ahead of time. But it formulates your head. You look at it and you go, okay, cool. I understand where everything goes. And with your deployment should be your first turn plan anyway, right? Like it's regardless of your opponent, that is because if you go first, your opponent hasn't done anything yet. So, all right, if I draw this card, this is what I'm going to try to do. If I do this, this is what I'm going to try to do. Take that. That, like, if you can't get in a game, nothing else, you're like, what is one thing I can do to prepare? Do a quick deployment by yourself on TTS. That's it. Yeah,
great stuff. Maybe we want to run through some questions. I don't know, Ratnu or Brian, if you have any other tournament prep general advice. Oh, the one other thing I would say, if you can get one of those little laser things that helps you with sight lines, man, those things are helpful. I've been using my tape measure for years just to go, you can get but the laser thing is so great, having used one for the last little while, just really nailing down, yes, I can see you, no, I can't see you. Both players agree before anything else happens. If I move here, I can see all of that. So that's in terms of knickknacks to take, tokens, visual aids, your army, spare base, little laser thing. I don't know what they're called, not laser pointer, but you know what I'm saying, right? Anything else to add before we jump into the questions, Ratnu?
I think one of the kind of really important things about any tournament is think about where the nearest toilet is. And if you need to go to the toilet, try and go at a time that is not at lunchtime or during a break. Either say hello to your opponent and go a couple of minutes at the start of the game, or if you finish early, try and go then, because otherwise the queues can get really big.
It's great advice if you're going to a bigger event and there's lots of people around. I really like that. Yeah. All right. So let me jump into some questions. First of all, a shout out to our Patreon members. If you're on the Patreon, thank you so much for supporting the podcast. Really, really love it. Paul Evans, new member. Hey guys, Happy New Year. With the current meta, is there a strong case for Forge Pact? And as part of that question, for someone with no AdMech, is it worth buying them to run the detachment, maybe with 11 on the horizon? I will tell you that I've been playing Quest to Forge Pact the last couple of games just to see how it plays out. And I have bought some AdMech, and I'm really enjoying it, actually.
It's like watching my friends start using drugs, man. It just, I don't know. First and foremost, I would say do not base your model purchases off of if you think something will be good for this edition or the next. Nope. Like, so if you're asking, should I buy Skatari? Because no, you should not. Now, if you look at Skatari and you're like, this is a really cool project, I want to hobby it, cool. I support that, but not a trying to predict if it will be good or not. I think is it something that will be enjoyable for you? To all the points that Ratnu and I were kind of talking about earlier with terrain, WTC, and everything else. Yes, having 40, infantry bodies in your list can really balance out a lot of the challenges you might face from terrain. Will I say there's a strong case for it? No, but that's just because Reese knows. I think I would probably have a stroke if I actually said that out loud. But
right, I bought 40 Vanguard, 40 Rangers, and a friend of mine gave me a Marshal. So that's my. But boy, I love the model. So it feels like a gateway drug into AdMech. Actually, that's where I can see things going. I'll be buying those chicken walker things before you know it, and then I'll have an AdMech army.
It's the second mortgage, getting an AdMech army, but more.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. But it is great advice. You buy the models because you love the models. And this is one of the first things the G-Dub guy said to me at the store when I first became interested in this game is, listen, armies, they're good, and then they're not good anymore. And then they're going to be great, and then they're terrible. So it's such an up and down thing. You just got to buy the stuff you really want to paint and see on your shelf. Jake Thundersnake says, do you think there are certain picks that might be better for newer players, even if they aren't the most optimal points-wise? Canis comes to mind with the free strat that gives you some AP leeway. Right now, I apologize that these are very IK-focused questions, but the same would apply. Are there models or units that come to mind for you, or detachments even, that are just easier to pick up as newer players?
Yes. Go ahead, Ratnu.
Yeah.
Answer for the CK side.
So very, very briefly, from the Chaos Knights perspective, Infernal Lance is pretty straightforward. You either move bigger, you shoot or punch bigger, or you're slightly more defensive. And in terms of data sheets, I think the double Gatling gun despoiler is really, really straightforward. You just simply move 10 or 13 inches, you touch a terrain feature, and you start blasting. There's not more complexity to it than that. The only choice comes from where you deploy, where you move, and what you blast. That's all.
Yeah, I like that.
Brian? Mine would be, there are definitely detachments that are easier. Like we were talking about it before the show, but like Gate Warden is not something I would ask a new person to pick up. Not super straightforward. Like Questora's Companions is actually super approachable for any new player, and can be a great entrance way because they're like, I just like these big robots. I want to use them. Cool. Pick 5. Let's go. So yes, I think again, I lean towards, though, if you're a new person like getting into it, pick what units you look at and they engage you, be it an ability they have or whatever. Because if you like that ability and you're focused on it, you will remember to use it. You will build the repetition. You will build the game skills because it's something that draws your interest. Does that make sense? Versus like, if I just give you a net list that you have no attachment to, and you're like, the status sheet never interested me, but I got to try to remember its rules in that one. Like, that's why I think Knights can be a great intro army, be it CK or IK, because it's fewer units, but you can attach yourself to them.
Yeah, I love that. Daniel has brought up the practice games that we were talking about and TTS, which I kind of glossed over. I'm assuming both of you have to be a part of TTS for your respective international teams and the other teams that you're involved in. So whether you love TTS or not, you're familiar with it and on board with it. I do enjoy it. It's a great way to get an easy practice game all over the world. That's one of the reasons I like it. You can play with people from different metas and different cultures and different backgrounds. It's very, very cool. You both enjoy TTS as a way of practicing, Ratnu?
I think enjoy is probably a strong word. There's a certain kind of social element which you probably lack compared to the sort of it's not as tactile as you roll the dice, you see your opponent's lovely painted models, you move yours kind of over the battlefield and whatnot. I think as with any tool, it's useful insofar as how you apply it. And if you apply it to do things like learning the terrain, learning sort of movement patterns, learning opponent threat ranges, it can be really, really helpful. I think sadly nothing will ever substitute a real kind of in-person face-to-face game. But if you're say like traveling, or if you're away, then absolutely TTS is a really, really helpful resource. And also in other ways, it's a very sort of it's a great sort of democratizing resource. It's a great leveler where you don't need that kind of financial investment and commitment to spend like £1,000 on an army to build and paint it. You can test, you can try, and you can understand. So
it lets you take the army for a test spin, because there's nothing worse than being like, man, like, sorry, but this is my 5th edition nightmare. I was like, you know what? I've gotten into 40K. I think Harlequins are cool. I'm going to buy some of these models. Yes, everything has a 4-up, but also everything has just a 4-up. Like, bolters made me very sad. And then I discovered that painting checkerboard was the thing that I absolutely despise most in this hobby. And so I had bought these models that I did not want to build or paint and hated if I had maybe played a couple of games on TTS with the army first. And it didn't exist then. So I think it's great there for being able to try out lists, try out models that you don't necessarily have access to. And I think that's got a long way in helping people be able to know where they want to take their model collection and things like that, because it does break down that barrier that can exist.
Imagine if a person who was thinking about Quest of Forge Pact would try it first rather than just rushing out and buying 40 Rangers and a Marshal. Imagine if they did that. That would probably be super helpful. But I'm totally with you guys that playing the game, one of the reasons we love the game is the social element and the back and forth and the in-person and the actual moving models around and the fact that you have your army on the table, and so nothing replaces that. But as a practice tool, great stuff. Wayne, I've saved this question to last deliberately. Happy New Year all. My New Year resolution is to attend my first Warhammer tournament by the end of the year. Wayne, go you. What advice do you have for prepping for it? This is the point of the episode. I feel like we've covered a lot of that off. What sort of things should I expect? The one thing I'm most worried about is getting overwhelmed by the occasion and potentially missing rules and bondsman abilities. How do you overcome this? Let me say, Wayne, from my point of view, you will forget rules and you will forget bondsman abilities, and you will still do that in 10 years when you've gone to 50 tournaments. That just happens. That just is a thing. As Ratnu alluded to earlier, go to have fun, understand that you'll make mistakes, that you will forget things, and so will your opponent, and just be nice to each other about it, right? But I love going to tournaments. And I remember my first one and being terrified by it, but it was such a good time. And people are so much nicer than you think they're going to be. This is not a cutthroat, brutal world of 40K. It's just people there to have a good time, right? Is that your experience, guys, in the world of going to events?
Sorry, we're both nodding. I think we're trying to out nice guy each other to see which one of us will break the silence first. But
I have to say, for people listening on the podcast, not watching on the YouTube, everybody's nodding, but no one's talking. So, Brian, yes.
Yeah, I think, to the point about Worlds, I went wanting to have a good time, knowing that there were going to be some rough games in there. And I had a phenomenal time. I met some amazing people. I think, give yourself grace. I think you're already on your way there. If you're asking, like, I'm worried about getting overwhelmed, about forgetting stuff, you will. And you know what? Sometimes those are the best lessons. Remembering that insane bravery exists, and I could just have auto passed my turn 5 battle shock test to secure the primary to win the game. After I failed to remember it once and it cost me the game, I have never forgotten again. And like, those are the stories you just kind of learn to laugh about. And so I also think, like, it's the kind of thing that as you talk to your opponent, like when you go up to your first round opponent and you're like, hey, it's great to meet you, I'm really excited, this is my first tournament game, like, man, if I get that at round 1, I'm cool. I want to make sure that you get to have a good time. I'll ask questions, I'll offer like reminders, like, it's, again, renewing that kind of social contract that Ratnu was talking about. And then just, it's really easy. I go both ways on the social aspect. There are some tournaments that after the last round of the day, I'm very like socially drained, tapped out. I just want to sit in my room, like eat, go to bed. But try to make yourself spend some time, like just chat with some folks at lunch, even if it's like with your round 2 opponent that you had a great time with, walking and chatting with them as you go to get lunch. It's how you'll build a community, especially if you're somewhere that is not as local to you. You'll start to meet people. You'll see each other at tournaments again.
Oh,
not sure if it's just me, Brian, but we lost you for just the last part of that. You seem to have disappeared audio-wise. Ratnu, we can still hear you, right?
Maybe if you still can.
Yeah,
okay.
You're definitely there. Brian's definitely not audio-wise. I don't know why. I don't know what's happened. Florida has disappeared. Just audio-wise, we can still see you just fine. Okay, but that's all right. Well, maybe reset and come back to that. There are a couple of questions I'd just like to race through on the Discord as well, and so I encourage people to join up on the Discord. It's free, and the people like Ratnu and Reese and Stig and Brian are all there as part of the chat in the Discord and answer questions. There are some very broad questions here, which I feel like we might have to come back and do another episode on, like how do we succeed in this current meta? That's too much. I don't know if we can do that one right now. 57 minutes into the episode.
Innovate.
What are they
just
saying?
Try something new. That's how you're going to succeed. You'll never sort of achieve the same things if you just keep on building the same lists. Just do something different, have fun, try something new. That's what's going to sort of get the ball rolling.
Yeah, great. I love that. Johnny says that he'd love Brian to give his rundown on how he would play Gate Warden. That's going to be for another episode as well. And at this stage, Brian is just offering visual moral support to Ratnu and myself in this. We can still not hear you, right, Brian?
I haven't talked yet. How about now?
Oh, there we are.
Can you hear me now? All right. I don't know. I got censored. Okay. Florida censored me. The land of freedom. I don't know what happened. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. First tournament coming up at the end of the month says Men and Knights. Any matchups that I should pay particular consideration to? At your first tournament, all of them, I think. I don't know. Are there any particular matchups, guys, that you pay extra attention to?
Nothing kind of specific, like you're saying. If it's your first tournament, just go to have fun, no expectations. Just make sure that you learn something every game and that you and your opponent both have a good time. That's it. Just don't put any standards on yourself. Just enjoy it.
There are an awful lot of, now that I look through these folks in the Discord, we might come back to a lot of them just because, as I mentioned in the setup to this is all about tournament prep. We've got a lot of questions in here about, what role do you think Imperial Knights has in teams events, and what's the most competitive CK list currently that's not just Infernal with 2 Gatmen? How do you approach list building for a singles tournament as opposed to a teams tournament? So listen, we've done a list building episode and it's non-specific in terms of what's hot right now. But it takes into account a lot of philosophy. So if you look back through the episode list, there is a list building episode that covers a lot of that stuff off and talks about teams events. Nico has asked how we feel about the David Gaylard, Vic VJ comments about Knights, which covered off right at the start. Reese wants to know, this is a very important question, which crayon color is Ratnu? Which crayon flavor is Ratnu's favorite?
I'm an equal opportunity crayon enjoyer. I don't discriminate by color.
Very good. And there are various other thoughts on this, various lists and things. So we'll come back to that in another episode. We are going to do an ep on Gate Warden. We're going to do also episodes for folks listening on the various CK detachments with Ratnu and other top CK players. So we hope that you can join us for that. And then we will, as 11th approaches, I guess we'll be looking more and more at, what we're hoping for and what we're going to do at the end of 10th and the various tournaments that we're going to. So I think after exactly an hour, we'll leave it there. And if there are questions on the Discord that we can, approach individually, maybe we can do that over the next few days. Brian, thank you so much, mate. Appreciate it. Good luck for whatever's next for you, for Cherokee, which you said was in, what did you say, about a month?
About a month, yep.
Okay. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask, are you taking Knights or is this top secret? Are you looking somewhere else?
The plan as of now is to, I won't lie, Pantheon of Woe does look really fun. But I don't know if I can have Necrons ready in time.
Yeah. Well, that's the other big thing. Oh, do you know what? In terms of tournament prep, that's the other big thing. How do you guys approach this? Just before we go, one last question. I feel like if I'm not panic painting on the Friday night before an event, then I'm not really playing 40K. But there are events I've gone to where I just take the models that are already done, so I don't have to stress about it.
There's nothing that makes me hate this hobby more than panic painting for a tournament. Like, I don't enjoy that painting. So I try very hard not to do that. Because I wind up being like, and then I get the model there, and all I can do is stare at it and be like, I know I rushed that. God, that doesn't look good.
Yeah.
It just bothers
me. But I
do
find that this is what makes me paint models. Like if I commit to taking my Castellan, I've got a new-ish Castellan. If I commit to taking it to the next event, I'm like, okay, now I will get it done. So that at least gets me through painting my army. Right now, are you I'll take the units I want to take and I'll paint them if I have to, or do you prefer the relief of just take what I've got painted?
I'm not much of a painter at all, so there's a bit of a lag between when I would have to make a choice on a list and then ask my friend, can you please paint these 3 abominants for me, and then take it to the event. So there's a lot less panic painting and a lot more panic list writing.
Right. Yeah. Well, if you're doing that though, surely you're just in a position where like you've got to have figured out the guts of your list at least.
Yeah.
Well in advance. Like I do that thing of I've settled on a list and then I don't know 10 minutes before list submission deadline I change it completely and then I go back and change it again.
I think one of the really good things, one of the really good things about Knights is that every model is basically baby knight, big knight, bigger knight. So as long as you've painted the chassis and a few weapons, it's very easy when it comes to magnetizing to, just chop and change as needed.
Well, listen, thank you so much. Good luck for the exams, Ratnu, which I know you're kind of prepping for. Brian, Ratnu, thank you for your time. Appreciate it, folks. Thank you for listening and for watching. If you're on the YouTube, remember 40kbynight.com is our website. And we encourage you to go there so you can check out all the episodes previous on list building and on, what is strong at the minute and all of that sort of stuff. And for our experts, I'm Steve Joel. This has been 40K by Night. We will